Everybody wants that smoking gun evidence, the crashed UFO, the alien bodies, and I believe that those things exist. But this release isn't for the people who already believe. It's for the general public. The goal right now isn't full disclosure. The goal is acclamation. And how do you move society through a revelation that represents a giant paradigm shift without causing chaos? This revelation is not just aliens might be real. This revelation is we have to rethink our whole entire human history. We have to rethink science. We have to rethink energy. We have to rethink evolution. We have to rethink economics, human identity. There will be a fundamental change, like I said, a paradigm shift on who we are, and what our place in the universe is. Hal Puthoff, who is a leading physicist, people with direct access to this information, to these programs, have told him that there are four main archetypes of other beings that we have recovered, interacted with. Greys, insectoids, mostly meaning praying mantis looking beings, reptilian beings, creatures that look like reptiles but are highly intelligent, and what they call Nordic looking beings. They look a lot like us, except very tall, like blonde hair, blue eye looking beings. I get that that sounds really wacky, but given the information source, I don't know if I would count it out, man. Of all of the abduction stories that have ever come out, so many of those include beings that look like one of those four described. Whether it's correct or not, it kind of suggests that this conversation behind closed doors and in appropriate settings is going a lot further than we think it is. If you've heard something about the UFO file release and you're feeling like it was a bit of a nothing burger, UFO enthusiasts are asking the wrong question. Everybody wants that smoking gun evidence, the crashed UFO, the alien bodies, and I believe that those things exist. But this release isn't for the people who already believe. It's for the general public. And that's why it feels like there's not a whole lot going on yet. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some interesting kernels of information in the release nonetheless. The goal right now isn't full disclosure. The goal is acclamation. Maybe you have a friend who refuses to believe that UFOs even exist, even though we've been having this conversation for a while in the open in Congress and amongst government and military officials, that they are real, that they are a problem for us, that we know that our adversaries aren't the ones making them, but we can't seem to land on where did they come from. Answering that question might open a can of worms that the government would rather not open if they can help it. What happens when an average person first finds out that UAP or UFOs exist? They usually say, okay, it's just a drone, or it's just this, it's just that. Or they jump to, okay, but I can't imagine that it's an alien because how could they get here from so far away and then crash or what have you? Be seen. What kind of evidence do you feel like that person would need to believe the bigger claims? Think about it. What would it take for the average person? And how do you move society through a revelation that represents a giant paradigm shift without causing chaos? This is what we're figuring out right now in real time. And I think the government's struggling just as much as the people. For the UFO enthusiasts, we've been waiting, right? We know. We've done enough research on this to know that a lot of this stuff must be true. That, yes, there were crashes many years ago, that we recovered craft, that we probably recovered bodies, that we've been reverse engineering this technology, as well as some of our top adversaries, for a long time. That there is non-human intelligence, that there are secret compartmentalized special access programs that deal with this sort of thing. We've known all that to be true. We're just kind of waiting for the confirmation at this point. And I say to you, the enthusiast, be patient. Wait for everybody else to catch up. That's what the theme of this video is. Hey there, what's up? My name's Ash, I'm a life coach, and you might be wondering why I'm doing a video on this. Well, I feel like it's important for humanity, and that's what I'm here for. On this channel, we talk about everyday great advice to help you improve, to help you understand yourself, and to help you make changes that you need to make. And the occasional video like this, where we're talking about all of humanity and what we need to all do to envision a better future. Because it's not just about us as individuals, it's about the collective. So, if you're going through it, if you're trying to figure out your next steps in life, if you're trying to just do better every day, this is a channel for you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I put out new videos every week. I do want to share some of my favorite little video clips and tidbits from the UFO file release to date and talk about some other statements that have been made that I think project where this is going in the future. First up, we've got a typical orb sighting. I've seen many just like this. It's usually like a white or yellow, orange, maybe red orb, sometimes blue, but most of the time they're just kind of floating about, and you'll see that they just move in ways that are really odd. But then what will happen is sometimes this video doesn't do it, but a lot of times they can disappear and then reappear and then pop in, almost like they're popping in and out of our reality or something. And sometimes they can all of a sudden split off into three, and all of a sudden there's three of them, and they can reduce back down into one and then disappear again. You name it, they can kind of do it. Hover in the air for a long time, no sound, no chemtrail, no visible signs of propulsion, just a little orb floating around. If you've never seen a UFO before and you're going to see one, you're probably most likely to see something like that. Here's another typical one, just moving at a one constant speed, just humming along through the camera frame. Very typical. I think it's important to show these videos because to an enthusiast, they're just like a whatever sighting, not a particularly interesting one, but to the average person, they don't even know what they're looking for. And to show orbs like that is important because this is a lot of what you see. They definitely get weirder and bigger and much more different shapes and movements. And then there are the qualities. Previously, in congressional testimony, a document from an insider was brought forward that described many different shapes and types that they have identified so far. What often happens is when you see these objects up closer, a lot of times there seems to be an object that is encased in kind of a fluctuating energy of some sort. This video is a good example. A lot of times you'll see the object with fluctuating properties on its exterior around its outer edges. I think this is often energy. This video is a good example of that. You can kind of see like the outside of it is like wavering and flexible, and it's weird, right? Based on theories of how this technology might work, we might be talking about an energy bubble that surrounds something. That you could create an electrical charge big enough to create kind of a warp bubble around an object and allow it to move freely without gravitational effect, among other things. It sounds like magic, but it's just technology we don't understand quite yet. And lastly, this video of this star thing. It is, I gotta say, this is probably the most interesting shaped one I've seen that the government's released. And it also seems to have some sort of like a little bit of a trail behind it, which is unique. I released a shorter version of this video on TikTok, and someone was in my comments saying that this one was a flare. I'm not a flare expert by any means, but what? Maybe because they saw the trail, they assumed it was a flare. They said it was already debunked as a flare. I don't know where they got it, that person got that information. Given the 5 observables of UAP, just usually not having any sort of like vapor trail or signs of propulsion in that sense, I was a little intrigued that this one does seem to kind of have a trail of some sort behind it. I don't know what that represents, to be honest. It doesn't seem like it's free falling like a flare would, though, unless there are flares that propel themselves around. I'm, again, not a flare expert. I found the shape and the way this thing emanates, it seems the light emanates from it, to be really interesting. And this is what I mean, that oftentimes there seems to be like an energetic bubble around something at the core. What we might be observing is a shadow effect. What I mean is, we as three-dimensional objects cast a 2D shadow on, let's say, a sidewalk when we're standing, when we're walking. In the same way, an object from fourth, fifth, whatever dimension could cast a shadow into our dimension as they kind of hover by or pass through. Our scientists know other dimensions exist. They have theorized it for a long time. But the unfortunate thing is that our human little eyes can't quite see that. So it's hard for us to wrap our heads around the concept. So these videos, while not super exciting because it's not like it's like a slow drive-by that shows the passengers of the UAP waving, we're not there yet. Is the point. What we're likely to see is a lot of witness testimony, which the files, the ones I read through, did have a lot of witness testimony, and some of them were just randos that they could have said anything, and they weren't verified claims, and other people were like pretty high up military officers and things like that. So I do think there were a lot of credible reports in there, even if they are somewhat unfounded. We don't know if they were fully investigated, things like that. So your pilot reports, some of these videos, if you see redactions, it's usually because they don't want anyone, to our adversaries in particular, to know what kind of radar we're running on certain equipment, or what kind of equipment rather we're running on certain planes, certain vehicles. Videos like this are just barely scratching the surface, and I think we can all acknowledge that. But the main point is that this is for the general public to understand that, yes, again, these things are real. I think the whole UFO file release thing has been kind of not very taken seriously. And I think the reason that it's not being taken seriously, unfortunately, is because Trump happens to be the president and the person who is kind of leading the charge on this, on camera at least. But if there's one thing that I can get you to take away from this, is that you have to take whatever your political opinion is, whatever your opinion of Donald Trump, of this administration is, completely out of the equation. The people who are really pushing for this transparency are people like you and me, and some people high up in the military and in Congress and in the government who have realized that, frankly, they've been lied to about programs that they didn't know existed, that they were supposed to be informed of. And people who have actually worked in these programs are, many of them, becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the fact that A, this has been kept from society. B, I think that there is a sudden urgency that they feel like now would be the time to really push to get the public on board with whatever's going on. And C, that, the way these programs have been run is probably deeply concerning for people who have devoted their life to military service and serving their government. And the fact that these programs are very much intermingled with Fortune 500 companies, electronics companies, the defense contractors who are all for profit. So maybe we don't have a very good handle on what we're doing with these things. And for anybody working in that field, I would be concerned. But here's where it gets complicated. How does a government, on one hand, that certain people know that this stuff is happening, but there are gatekeepers who keep that information from other people who should know, and so therefore a giant swath of people think that this is bullshit, and probably some weird conspiracy theory, or a psyop cover for a very legitimate program that is probably some exotic propulsion or something like that. I would accept that argument, to be honest, if these things weren't being seen since like the 40s, the 50s, and even before then. I would accept that. But I just don't see it at this point, because this has been going on a lot longer than like the last few decades. This has been going on for the better part of a century, way before we had the technology to create anything along the lines of what we see out there in some of these videos. So on one hand, you have these people pushing for transparency, and they are deeply concerned about the way that this has been going, about the way it is going, about the way it might go in the future if the general public doesn't know about this. Cell phone cameras, telescopes, they're all getting better and better. People are capturing weird shit, honestly, on camera, looking at the moon just on a random day, just something like passing by the moon that is clearly not a satellite. It's only a matter of time before people start to see things that the government can no longer explain. And the government really needs to get out in front of that, quite frankly, because people are either going to do really good with this or they're going to do really bad with this information. People who have been maybe deeply religious their whole life, who are very dogmatic, who don't accept change very well, they may not deal very well with this information, which is why I feel like we're going to get a certain level of information enough to let us know that the phenomenon is real, but we're probably not going to get a very satisfactory explanation from the government. I don't think the government, A, knows how to explain this to people, B, doesn't want to open a can of worms that they can't like. The toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't really put it back situation, and then there are going to be more and more questions. Because if this is real, what about this and this and this and this and this? And the answers to those questions, frankly, might be uncomfortable for a lot of people. If I were involved in the government, no, I would not want to take the responsibility of hand-holding an entire population and telling them the full truth of whatever this phenomenon may be in their findings. And then there are the obvious concerns of national security, of, the government not wanting to tarnish their own credibility. I think they've already done a pretty good job of that, to be honest, but neither here nor there. This revelation is not just aliens might be real. This revelation is we have to rethink our whole entire human history. We have to rethink science. We have to rethink energy. We have to rethink evolution. We have to rethink economics, human identity. We'd be starting at ground zero and building our way back up. Maybe not ground zero, but there would be a fundamental change. Like I said, a paradigm shift on who we are, and what our place in the universe is. Because these programs have been kept so secret for so long, even from people who probably should have known about them from the get, we're now in a conundrum where you can't go from deny, this doesn't exist, Area 51 is mostly a myth, whatever. You can't go from saying things like that for many decades to then saying, okay, non-human intelligence exists. We've known about it for a long time. We've recovered some of this technology and we've been reverse engineering it. It's kind of a big mic drop, don't you think? My genuine hope is that the UFO files turn out to be more than what they are right now, that we do get a lot of the answers that we're looking for out of them. But I also hope that someone somewhere is sitting down and thinking very hard about how fast and in what manner we do that, and how we manage the release of that information, and what explanation we give alongside it. Because if we go 0 to 100, if you think people didn't trust their government now, forget about it. Global markets will likely become very unstable. There will be some sort of political fallout, and a public panic, maybe. Most importantly, the idea of intelligent life elsewhere is the thing that probably most challenges a lot of people's more dogmatic, more strict religious beliefs, which on paper sounds like a terrifying thing. However, in all my research into this topic, some religious texts may refer to it. Some deleted parts of the Bible may refer to it. And in my more consciousness-driven research into this topic, I've discovered that perhaps even beings from elsewhere believe in God too. Perhaps there's a world where we come to realize that we don't have to believe every aspect of what we've been taught in a religion. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be all of this stuff in my religion and everything in this text is true, or all of it is fake and these beings are real. Two things can be true at once. God can be real, and God can have other children besides us. Oh well, it's a big deal, but when you think about it, there are just others. They're just people that live elsewhere. They might look different. Some of them might look shockingly similar to us, and that's a conversation for a different day. Maybe some of them look nothing like us. Maybe some of them don't even fit in what we think of as the definition of life. think there's a very large spectrum that we need to prepare ourselves for. Another interesting thing that has come up, Hal Puthoff, who is a leading physicist who has been involved with our government on several highly, highly sensitive projects, and is one of the most respected physicists probably in the US. He claims to not have direct knowledge of this, though there are probably some NDAs and he can't say certain things, so I don't know. But he has claimed that people with direct access to this information, to these programs, have told him that there are four main archetypes of other beings that we have recovered, interacted with, what have you. Greys, which, smallish, gray alien, big head, big eyes, that sort of description. Insectoids, mostly meaning praying mantis looking beings. Reptilian beings, creatures that look like reptiles but are highly intelligent. And what they call Nordic looking beings. They look a lot like us, except very tall, like blonde hair, blue eye looking beings. I get that that sounds really wacky, but given the information source, I don't know if I would count it out, man. I don't know if I would count it out. Also, that being said, of all of the abduction stories that have ever come out, so many of those abduction stories include beings that look like one of those four described. Not exclusively, there are certainly other descriptions as well. But if you're talking about main themes that come up in terms of look, those are the four kind of archetypes that show up a lot. So, do I think every abduction story is true? No, I do not. I think there are a certain amount of people out there that like attention and would say wacky things to get in the newspaper or whatever. On the other hand, there are a large percentage of people who have made abduction claims and still claim that everything that they said was true, but they also claim that they wish they had never told anyone because nobody took them seriously, and they claim it ruined their life, that the press just, made fun of them and whatever. It's not easy to come out and tell a story like that because it sounds fantastical. I get it. But I don't think that every story is untrue. And I find it interesting that certain archetypes tend to come up very often of those four. So, if this is the future we're hurtling towards, where we're talking about different archetypes of extraterrestrial species or interdimensional species or whatever they may be, we need to start to take things like this more seriously. Eric Davis who was also another top physicist. I believe he mentioned the same four archetypes too, that he had been briefed on them. Someone like Hal Puthoff talking about four different types of alien beings. He has zero personal or career incentive to say that sort of thing. He's one of the most respected physicists in the game, and he has been involved with our government for a long, long time. And I want to be clear, they aren't his observations. They were relayed to him by someone very close to him. I think more than one person very close to him who have a direct involvement with more of this than he did. And again, I don't know. There are probably NDAs involved, so he's probably got to be really careful about how he says certain things. But he seems very confident in this, and he seems very confident in whoever he got the information from, which is important. Whether it's correct or not, it kind of suggests that this conversation behind closed doors and in appropriate settings is going a lot further than we think it is. Likewise, several members of Congress have had conversations with intelligence officials that they have vetted and that they trust at this point. Look, this is going to come off as wacky, but they're talking about like hybridization programs and stuff like that with members of Congress. So this stuff is getting mentioned, and it's stuff that's been part of the UFO lore for a long time. And, I've always just kind of like acknowledged it and said, okay, like, we'll see type of thing. But now it's like landing at the steps of Congress, and it's not just like some a random veteran who came up and made a crazy claim. And sure, there are plenty of members of Congress who get people like that at their office. And Anna Paulina Luna was saying, like, yeah, sometimes I get some people in my office and they're going off about some wild stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I don't not believe you, but like, that's not my central focus right now. Like, I need to, sorry, you know? So sure, some of that may be going on, but the people who are saying these sort of things are not the type of people who would just make it up. So time will tell what happens there. But these are the kind of conversations that are happening behind closed doors that are like not something that's going to come out today, probably, but something we may be having very serious conversations about in the next several years. So just giving you a preview of like where the conversation is behind closed doors. I think we're on that path of disclosure. I truly do. But I think that it's going to start out a little bit like this, where it's a little trickle of this, a little trickle of that. Maybe one little interesting video that's like, oh, that's different. I've never seen that before. To somebody who has seen this stuff before. But the big stuff is coming. And it's going to start off slow, like I said. And then soon, maybe in the next, I don't know. My guess is maybe the next year or so. News channels, like mainstream news channels, might start covering UFO stories in a much more serious way. And they might start doing maybe weekly UFO reports of user submissions, of government reports, what have you. I expect a frequency in reports that will actually, for once, make it on mainstream news channels. That journalists will start taking this more seriously all of a sudden. I also expect, and it's already happening, that the whistleblowers are going to become more emboldened and start to come out. Now, I do want to throw one caveat in that there are now, I think we're up to like 13 or 14 missing, dead scientists who were, most of them involved in exotic propulsion programs. I'm very nervous about that story. That is really worrying to me. Some people think, what if it's an adversary trying to kidnap them? Some of them, we don't know if they're kidnapped or dead. There's at least one missing who, McClelland, is that his name? He's been missing for some while, and his wife was very immediately concerned because he had left some things behind that didn't make sense to her. I don't know what to make of it. Sure, I worry a little bit that an adversary maybe is trying to hunt these people down and extract information from them. I actually worry more that it's our own government. That our government is, and I don't mean our government like Donald Trump and the administration. I mean like much deeper people in government and high up in military intelligence have made some unilateral decisions about the way that they would like disclosure to go that doesn't involve the very experts that we would want to hear from testifying or becoming involved with perhaps a public project to explore reverse engineer, anti-gravitic propulsion or something like that. I a little bit wonder if this is kind of like the death rattle of the powers that be that are involved in this, trying to do anything they can to take some of the biggest assets off the table, if you will. Whether to keep them from testifying, whether to keep them from trying to make this technology like public domain, whether to keep them from working for an adversary, I don't know. But I don't think the missing or dead scientists have gotten enough attention from mainstream media, and that is super disappointing to me. Nothing can really be hidden anymore, and I think the powers that be know that, and this was maybe their last attempt to try to stifle progress. But I don't think it's going to ultimately work. I think that people are too determined now, and I feel like whatever is causing the urgency from within these programs is too great for them to give up now. They've already been under threat. David Grush has been under threat. Other people involved with this have been under threat. I think disclosure is going to happen through whistleblowers as well, still, despite whatever threats may be. And as these files continue to come out, more congressional attention, obviously, and more scientific discussion, which is great. Avi Loeb runs the Soul Foundation, and it's become kind of a conglomerate of different scientists who are and experts, field experts, who are committed to making this information public and exploring it independent of our military and government. So we're trying to move on from, are UFOs real? We're already there, right? Now we're trying to move on to, what are they? And that's where we need the public to kind of catch up to, are they real? Yes. And B, what are they? Let's all figure it out together. So over the next few years, I expect more congressional testimony, more file releases, more whistleblowers, more media coverage, definitely, and a growing acceptance by the public that life exists elsewhere and it is what it is. I also think that in the next couple years, maybe 2 to 4, I think the likelihood that there is a mass sighting event where most of Earth's population goes, oh, okay, like they're from somewhere else. I don't know what to say. I think we're, I think we're due for an event that probably a lot of people won't be able to deny the existence anymore. Now let's zoom out like 10 years. I feel like at that point we will have like pretty full public acknowledgement of non-human intelligence. It will be normalized in conversation. There will be increased transparency through the government at that point, greater scientific involvement. So maybe making this technology open source. Some of the word from within the programs is that they've made very little progress over the last 80 years on this technology. I don't know if I believe that. There have been some very strange interviews with people who are military contractors and things like that that lead me to believe that at a minimum they've got some very interesting prototypes that can do most of what we see when we see a UAP. Even if they can't do it quite safely at speed yet, if they haven't figured out how to keep pilots safe from maneuvers that would expose them to G forces, then we've got a problem. But once they figure that part out, we're off to the races. And at that point, maybe 10 years from now, we're probably going to be discussing like the possibility of open contact. How would we interact with other beings? How would we on Earth cooperate internationally so that perhaps other beings don't have like all these little tiny nation states to deal with, that they could deal with us all as one unit? How would we get to a place where internationally we could find a way to cooperate with other beings? How would our government work and function when interacting and when trading, when doing whatever? So the debate will go from, are they real, to how do we engage? And in 20 years, we're talking this is totally normal. We're talking open contact. We're talking full-on space exploration as humans. Not the way that we think about it now, where it would take years to go somewhere. We're talking like space travel would be almost completely normalized. We're talking totally new energy systems. Forget solar, forget wind. We'd be jumping over that into like something much, much greater and cleaner, probably. And then on a deeper level, a greater understanding of consciousness. Who are we? Why are we here? What is the meaning of life for us? What is humanity's place in the universe? What if our life missions just become different because of this? I think they will. And there's AI and energy in the future and how it folds into this. And actually, I think it's very relevant because we're at this weird juxtaposition right now where we're terrified maybe that AI is taking over too fast, and oh my God, all these people are going to lose their jobs, and oh my God, how is this going to affect our brains? Valid question. And how much is too much? What should we do and not do with it? Those are all questions that we have to suss out. But when it comes to the job replacement part, what if that is our future? If so many people's jobs are going to go away, we need to retrain a whole entire workforce, essentially. People who have different backgrounds, different skills. What if those skills could transfer to something that applies to this future? And I think we're not there yet, but very soon those things are going to intersect. And I think that really could happen inside 5 to 10 years, where space travel starts to become maybe a more normal thing. My weird, wacky prediction, and I don't think it's that weird or wacky, but my weird or wacky prediction is that Space Force, which was made kind of a joke by many people in government, and by all means, Space Force is talking about like defending the satellites and shooting satellites and missiles in space. Okay, I get it. And sure, maybe that's like this much of what Space Force does. But I think we're probably going to find out that Space Force is actually our path to legitimizing and mainstreaming what were secret access space programs for years. Space Force might be where a lot of this technology, a lot of this reverse engineering, a lot of those efforts might go. It will probably be the first frontier of like the US and other nations as well doing real space exploration, not like the way NASA does, not just for data, but true exploration, true interactions with other beings, trade, you name it. I think that's where it will all become legitimate, and where that will be like the public facing wing of this. I think there's a future where AI kind of takes over a lot of the jobs that A, most of us don't like to do anyways, and B, it will leave us with a need to do something with ourselves. And what if the infrastructure is almost ready to go by that point? We are able to change our trajectory as a species, not just in terms of what we do for a living. If these advanced propulsion technologies are real, we will achieve energy efficiency that we just can't even fathom right now. I mean, we would want for nothing. It would be instantaneous, unlimited energy, potentially. We could 3D print anything we want. We could create enough houses, enough energy, enough food for everyone all the time. We would essentially have no needs anymore. Our basic needs should be taken care of at that point for everyone globally, if they so choose. It will probably cause the need for a whole new economic system. Here's where we'll screw it up, and this is what we have to prevent. The potential risk of using this technology for weaponization over humanitarian use. That's the critical choice that we need to not fuck up. Because yes, of course, our government is using this for technology. They're also probably trying to weaponize it. Because that's what they do. So, we need to decide right now, collectively, do we want this to be a tool for control or a tool for collective advancement? That's basically it. It could certainly be two things at once, but the humanitarian effort needs to come first. In closing, I don't think that we're just going to get a one-day dramatic announcement of, oh, by the way, there are aliens. It's not going to happen that way. We're going to get the slow drip. The slow drip will get faster, and soon enough, the faucet will be wide open, and we'll get more and more and more. But we're probably going to have to sort out how we feel about that as an individual on our own, without much explanation from an official channel. So, we'll have to share research with each other and try to do the best we can to help each other out, understand this. It's occurring in stages, and we're in the early stages, but the gradual exposure, you'll start to feel it soon. And the growing public awareness is definitely, I can feel it, it's happening. So, to the enthusiasts out there, stay patient. It's not just for us, it's for everybody else too. Soon enough, we'll get information that will blow our socks off too. Till next time, peace.